So let's put ourselves in the shoes of Zechariah for a moment. Here we have this faithful priest having a mind-blowing encounter with God, with the supernatural, where he's got this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He's already excited, the adrenaline's flowing, and suddenly he has this encounter. Here is a priest who's been faithful all his life. He would know the scriptures, he would know the Old Testament, and he would be going about his purpose of seeking the Messiah, calling out to God to send the Messiah to rescue his nation, his people. And this faithful, righteous man is suddenly given this encounter where God says, everything you've known I'm going to redefine, where your life that's been one of law is now going to be all about grace. The faithfulness that you've shown is now going to make it possible for the Messiah to come, because grace is going to make it possible. And guess what, Zechariah? You're going to be part of the story. I think sometimes we don't maybe grasp some of this. Zechariah would know his Bible. He would know his history. He would know the story of God. He would know what he was looking forward to. He would know that Elijah was meant to come before the Messiah. And now here he is having an encounter with God where he's being told he is part of the story. He has an invitation to step in and be part of something that he's dreamt of, read about, understood, looked forward, called out, cried out to God all his life. He has a supernatural encounter. And what's his response? How can I be sure? Let's just think about that for a moment. Here is Zechariah standing in the presence of an angel. An awesome experience. If you were in a room and suddenly an angel appeared in all of the glory and all of the power, the bright, the shining, the magnificent, the awesomeness, and gave you a message, would you sit there and go, well, I'm not sure about it? Life had given Zechariah and Elizabeth many experiences, and here they were as old, he's an old priest, they're an old couple, and their history, their life lived experiences had begun to shape their expectations. And maybe this is why what we see here is the angel is telling Zechariah off a little bit. There's a gentle rebuke here. And sometimes when you read it, it might seem a bit harsh. Why is Zechariah being criticised for questioning the angel? Setting aside all that we've already heard about this incredible mind-blowing encounter and Zechariah questioning it. Let's look back to Genesis. In Genesis 15, God meets with Abraham and he calls Abraham to follow him. And Abraham takes God at his word and trusts him and leaves his land and goes and sets off on an adventure with God. And God promises Abraham that his descendants will be as numerous as the sand on the seashore. And yet Abraham is an old man as well who has no children. His wife is old, she has no children. And in chapter 15 we actually see that Abraham questions God's promise. He's asked God how this might be, and God gives him a sign. And in chapter 16 we see that Abraham he tries to go about solving God's purposes in the natural, in his own strength, and it all goes horribly wrong. And then in chapter 17, we see God speaks to Abraham specifically about his wife Sarah going to have a child, a boy, and they're going to call him Isaac. He even names him. And in verse 17, chapter 17, verse 17, it says, Abraham laughed in disbelief. And then in chapter 18, there's this incredible angelic visitation that some people see in there, that Abraham's actually encountering Jesus. But there's this angelic visitation. There's 3 visitors that turn up to meet with Abraham. And they reconfirm the promise. And in verse 12, Sarah laughs. So we have this encounter in Genesis where Abraham is told 3 times about the promise, and he laughs in disbelief, his wife laughs in disbelief, and they question God. And yet Abraham is described as being righteous, and so is Zechariah described as being righteous. So why is it that Abraham seems to get away when Zechariah is punished for what he said?